I may be a proponent of older technology here in my home theater. And not just older technology, but also older forms of disc-based media, such as Blu-rays and DVDs, and even in the odd case, some VHSs and things like that. But just because I have a love of those older technologies, that does not mean I completely disregard the most modern disc-based format, which is 4K UHD. In fact, I do think it definitely has its place here in the home theater space, as well as those older formats. Well, with that in mind, here today, I am talking about the Panasonic UB420 4K UHD player. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is the best 4K player you can buy for your money if you have a 1080p display and you're not using an actual 4K TV or projector. So if you want to hear why I think that, stay tuned. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to all the returning viewers out there. I really do appreciate it. But I also want to say thank you to anyone who may be new, and this may be your first time viewing my content. My name is Matt. This is Secondhand Home Theater, where I talk about various home theater topics, and I do it through the lens of buying used equipment, especially high-end used equipment that you can get for relative bargains now on the used market. And here today, this is no exception. I'm talking about a piece of equipment I bought about a year ago at the time of filming, and that is this Panasonic UB420 4K UHD player. And these are still produced nowadays. This is probably the most modern piece of equipment that I have here in my home theater. These brand new run about $200. Give or take a little bit, depending where you buy it from. And of course, you know, right now we're in the holiday season, so there's some different sales and stuff going on. But brand new, these generally float around $200. Sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little more than that. But these are still available to be purchased brand new. But like I said, I bought my unit about a year ago on the used market. I bought it on eBay. And honestly, this 4K player is the best bang for your buck and probably the best 4K player you can get for one specific reason that I'm going to get into, and that is HDR to SDR tone mapping. Real quickly, in case you guys don't know what HDR to SDR tone mapping is it's basically just a way to take the expanded color gamut and expanded brightness levels of HDR content that you would find on a 4K disc and convert that down to a 1080p signal with standard dynamic range. So basically it's just a way to take that 4K HDR signal and reproduce it on a 1080 SDR display while keeping the image intact and not really changing anything on there. If that makes sense. That's kind of the basic, you know, layman's terms about it. And so like I said, the Panasonic UB420 is probably your best bang for the buck, the best option you can get if you're wanting to do that HDR to SDR conversion. And if you guys have watched any of my content in the past, you will know that I don't run a 4K projector here in my home theater. I strictly have 1080p projectors. And that's kind of been a choice of mine, just because I felt like the price to performance ratio has always been a little bit better there on 1080p displays over the 4K displays, and especially more recently with buying these high-end DLP units that I've purchased, the image is actually quite good on those projectors, and they get overlooked quite a bit because they are older units. But because that image is so good, I have really never had the interest in upgrading to a 4K projector unit here in my home theater. And so that leads me to the Panasonic UB420 that I'm talking about here today. Because of the HDR to SDR tone mapping that this unit has, it's really a benefit and probably the best option for someone in my situation out there who may be watching this video in terms of a 4K UHD player. I've only used one other 4K quote-unquote player in the past here in my home theater with a 1080 projector, and that was several years ago. I'm talking like 5-6 years ago with an Xbox One. that had a 4K player built into it. And the image quality that came out of that Xbox here in my home theater was just unwatchable. And that really comes down to the tone mapping and just the processing of those Xbox units, that they're not set up to really display 4K HDR content on a 1080 display. They're really made to be used with a 4K display, whether it be a projector or a TV. And it just didn't really suit me. And at that point, I had actually gotten rid of every 4K disc I had and kind of drilled it down to the idea that, well, it's just not going to work unless I have a 4K projector. I hadn't stumbled across the idea of tone mapping and the ability to take that 4K signal and that HDR signal and make it 1080 SDR. This unit here is about the most modern thing I have here in my home theater in terms of equipment. Like I said, these are still in production nowadays. As I said a little bit ago, you can get these around $200, depending the time of year and if they're sales, brand new. You can definitely find them on the used market for less than that, you know, around $100, give or take, which is what I paid for this about a year ago. Now, it's not very heavy. It only weighs a couple pounds. It's not very big. You know, it's rather compact on here. And it only uses HDMI outputs, and it has a, you know, just optical audio if you needed that. But it has no component output, no composite, no direct audio output, nothing like that. It's basically strictly HDMI. And it offers 2 HDMI outs. Now, the reason this is on here, one of them does audio and video together, that you can send to a receiver or directly to a TV or whatever the case may be. But it also has a second option for just audio. So depending on your setup, if you have a setup where you need to split the signal and maybe send the signal directly to your TV or directly to a projector, and then the audio to a processor or to a soundbar or something like that to get the high quality audio, you can do that. You can run 2 separately. Now, for my situation with my home theater setup, I don't really need to do that. I run everything into my Emotiva processor that I have, and then that outputs everything, either the HDMI signal to my projector, and then all the audio gets processed and whatever. You know, I don't have to split the signal, but you could do that if you needed to. Same thing with the Toslink optical out there. If you need to use that for audio, you could also send that to a receiver or a TV or whatever the case may be. And then of course it has, you know, a USB and a Ethernet port if you want to hook it up to internet to use, you know, any of the like BD Live features or anything like that, which I have no interest in using here in my home theater, to be honest. Now, on the front of the unit, you'll notice it just has 2 buttons. It has a power button and an eject button on here. Just very basic, very simple kind of stuff. And when you do open this, this opens with a flap right here. And so the disc tray is right here. When I sit this on my home theater rack, like permanent use when I'm not holding it here for the video, I just keep this flap open just so that the tray doesn't constantly bump into it to open it up, because it'll just kind of open and then shut and then open and shut. I just don't want to mess with that, so I just leave this open on my rack, and I've never had any issues, you know, with it bouncing up or down or anything like that. Yes, it may not look as sleek, but honestly, I don't care. I think it's just, you know, a little bit easier to do something like that. The UB420 is a really good, high-quality unit, despite it not being a big, bulky Blu-ray player like some of the other ones I've had here in my home theater. It is relatively slender, but the picture quality is actually really good. And for me, again, because of this tone mapping where it takes that HDR to SDR conversion, I can definitely get really high-quality 4K images from UHD discs on my 1080 display without any issues. And you can go in and customize a bunch of settings. It gives you different luminance values, it gives you different brightness and HDR levels that you can mess with. You'll see popping up here on the screen. I'll show you the settings I kind of run on it. This will obviously vary depending on if you have a projector, if you have a TV, what type of projector, what type of TV. You know, I'm using DLP projectors, so if you're using like a DILA or an LCD or something, it may be different. Same as if you're using a TV. If you're using just an LCD TV or an LED TV or, you know, an OLED, you may have different settings in here, but these are kind of what I use here in my home theater, and everything seems to come out, you know, really well and produce a really good image. Now, in terms of real world content on this type of player here in my home theater, There is some noticeable upgrades between certain 4K discs and others. And I've had videos on this before. I mean, I'll post the one I did several months ago about this, where I think a lot of the image quality comes from how the actual movie or TV show you're watching was actually shot and produced and mastered, and how well the actual disc was encoded and how well the disc was mastered. Sometimes over whether or not it's 4K, Blu-ray, DVD, because you can get some really good DVDs that are out there, some really good Blu-rays that are out there, some really good 4Ks that are out there. And on the flip side, you can also get some really bad 4Ks, some really bad Blu-rays, and some really bad DVDs. It really just depends on a lot of factors. But in terms of real-world viewing with this 4K player, I definitely have noticed with certain films there is an uptick in visual and audio quality if that disc is mastered properly. Now, going along with that, there are a few alternatives you can get if you're wanting to get this HDR to SDR tone mapping. In terms of actual players, the UB420 is one of the only examples, and honestly probably the best example unless you buy one of the bigger brothers, you know, from Panasonic of this unit, that you can get in terms of a physical media player. There are other options though. You can go and do a LUT box, which is basically just like a processing box that you can run everything through, that kind of sits in the middle of your video chain, kind of after all your Blu-ray players and consoles and whatever you may have hooked up to it. It kind of goes at the end of that chain before it goes to your projector. You could go that route. You could also have a home theater PC and go the route of getting like MadVR or some other processing program within your home theater PC. You could do that as well. Now for me, I specifically wanted ease of use because I don't want to go through all the different customization options and going through all the tweaking of using a LUT box or using MadVR on a home theater PC. There definitely are people out there that love doing that. A bunch of the threads that I've followed on like AVS forum and things like that, there's a bunch of guys that love digging into that and really fine-tuning every little aspect of that sort of thing. And while I do enjoy like calibrating my projectors and calibrating my audio system when I get speakers and stuff in here, I didn't want to go through all the kind of minutia of setting up different profiles for every single component that would go through a LUT box or go through the MadVR on a home theater PC. So I wanted ease of use. But if you're someone who really wants the customization and the ability to do all that real, you know, very pinpoint like tweaking of stuff, a LUT box or MadVR or some other program for a home theater PC would probably be right up your alley and maybe have more value to you than just a standalone player. But for me, I wanted ease of use. I wanted just a single player to play 4K discs. Now, if you had a 4K display, whether it's a TV or a projector in your home theater or wherever you would be watching a 4K disc, perhaps this player may not be the best value to you. You may be able to go out and get some more dedicated 4K players that may not have that HDR tone mapping, but has other features that would be more of a benefit to someone with a 4K native display. I don't have that. So for me, the Panasonic UB420 is the best option you can get, the best bang for your buck, especially on the used market for that HDR 4K to 1080 SDR conversion. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the video here today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the content. Hopefully I provided some good information, useful information about the Panasonic UB420. Definitely comment down below if you have one of these players or maybe one of the bigger brother versions of this. Let me know your thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts on, you know, the 4K HDR to 1080 SDR kind of debate out there, if you guys do that in your home theater or not. Also, if you like the content I had here today, definitely consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I'm getting real close to 2,000 subscribers. It'd be really nice to hit that before the end of the year. As I said in the previous video, it'd be a nice Christmas present, and it doesn't cost you anything to click that like and subscribe button. I would appreciate it. And so with that, I'm gonna say goodbye. I appreciate everyone out there who's watched my content, and I will see you the next time in the next video right here on Secondhand Home Theater.